Hello, all, and welcome to today's webinar 5 ways to avoid getting more than a trifle inconvenienced by ransomware. I am Jeff Jones, and today I'd like to show you 5 of the most common ways we have found that modern businesses can fall victim to malware and ransomware infections in the workplace. And after showing you each of these, I'm going to demonstrate how you can mitigate against them using a particular configuration of our admin by request endpoint privilege management solution. We need to keep this webinar short and snappy, so let's get started. Before we start, just in case you've stumbled into this webinar by complete mistake, you might be asking yourself, what on earth is endpoint privilege management and what makes admin by request such a good solution? So endpoint privilege management, or EPM, is a 3-letter acronym that has evolved from the overall suite of functionalities that make up privilege access management, or PAM. PAM solutions come in many different shapes and sizes these days with different functionalities, all of which fit under this PAM umbrella. Other parts include things like remote access solutions, identity management, and password management. For the management of local admin, this category of PAM functionality is now generally known as endpoint privilege management, or EPM. Personally, it's a shame. I was hoping that my own term of local admin rights system would get adoption, but not because I thought this was any better, but really because I thought it would be a neat way for me to impress our CEO, Lars. So anyway, here's my take on what a good EPM should enable you to do. Deliver just the right amount of admin for just the right users at just the right time for just the right amount of time. There you go. And if you're wondering what makes admin by request such a good EPM, then I invite you to check out my list of top 10 features here. This is not a sales presentation, honest, so we'll move briskly on. But out of all of these points, I think that point number 3, highly flexible configurability, is probably the most important. The ability of admin by request to be easily configured to meet very specific use case requirements. And I will hopefully demonstrate exactly this as we go through the webinar to show you each risk scenario and then the recommended admin by request configuration that counters it. So here's your favorite PAM and EPM vendor pie chart. Every year, another study is done and a slightly different number pops out, but local admin usage is generally in the high 80s or low 90s when it comes to looking at the percentage of vulnerabilities and their relationship with local admin rights. However, if you look closely, you will see that in the small print it says percentage mitigated by removing local admin rights. So does this mean that all you guys on this call that have already removed local admin can then hang up? Well, no. Here's the thing. The 5 ways that you're most likely to get hit with ransomware that I'm going to show you, yes, these still apply to you guys too. But I removed everyone's local admin, so why is that? Well, the reason is that you've got rid of local admin from all your users, so congratulations. You've succeeded in preventing lateral spread of people all working alone in their kitchens. Yes, times have changed. And whereas before, organizations used to worry mainly about one infection and it's spreading laterally like wildfire over a LAN and then onto network shares, today the workforce is more distributed. People working from home and using cloud-based file share system, cloud CRM, and cloud ERP. So this kind of workforce is a far less attractive proposition for your run-of-the-mill, dumb ransomware saturation attack. It's kind of indiscriminate. Attack methods have evolved to become more intelligent and more targeted. Here's a classic example of a highly focused social engineering attack. So trawling LinkedIn and social media to identify the type of headset a specific person of interest uses. Kind of crazy. And then combining this with something really personal to them so you can make a hook and then the attacker can send them a really specially crafted and highly personalized fishy email. Brilliant. So if you think that none of this applies to you because you elected to become the most unpopular person in your company by removing everyone's local admin rights, think again. People still need admin. And people still give admin too. And when admin is given out, it's typically given out system-wise. You're giving away the keys to the car. You need to trust that the user that says they're only going to do the thing they need to do, and then when they do it, it's safe. Many IT people could not understandably live with that amount of fear, so they require IT help desk personnel to perform these tasks for users via remote session supervision. And this is not only hugely bad for productivity. In particular, out of help desk working hours, for example, but also does not rule out the possibility that the help desk worker themselves might inadvertently trigger malware themselves, becoming everyone's worst nightmare, the insider threat. And as people get fed up waiting for IT to get stuff working for them, then the risk of the users WhatsApping their pet geek for a little bit of shadow IT increases too. This is, of course, a very serious topic, but at the same time, it's important that people pay attention and remember what we're trying to say here. And after a hard think, I found the best way to get this message across to you on the webinar. We decided to use unicorns. I have great pleasure in introducing you to our 5 usage persona unicorns, each one of which represents a specific threat vector and mitigation. Aren't they just so cute and personable? I really hope that they become annoyingly ingrained in your subconscious forever. And that's the point. I mean, literally, they're unicorns. They all have little points on their heads, right? So without further ado, let's examine the first of our 5 ways, the POP. So what exactly is POP? Well, POP is basically, I would define as probably one of the most common types of local admin rights requester. So basically, you've removed all the local admin rights from your organization, and you're getting users kind of pop up asking for admin to do various sort of things like headset updates and maybe plugins or whatever. And because these things happen as and when, they usually occur kind of urgently. So a user has something they need to install for a meeting, print a driver for a presentation, and it's basically kind of stressful, not just only for the person needing to get stuff done, but also because if you route these kind of requests currently through your help desk, they're also going to be disrupted and have kind of a high pressure situation put on them. Okay, so it's kind of like a very time consuming process too. So depending on your setup that you might have, that might involve a ticket or a meeting, a Teams remote control or something. And due to the fact that all this stuff is coming in all over the place and it's all urgent, it's very, very disruptive for IT departments. And also, as things get queued up, the requests come in, and it's kind of like, yeah, okay, let's just let this guy elevate this to install this. And this is when, the problems start occurring. And also in how you're actually going to give these users admin to do the stuff they need to do. I've seen various things such as, adding someone to a group temporarily. You may forget to undo that. A script that is run that adds them to a group, but then the script takes time to land. And then, you don't know how long that script is going to keep the user in the group. Maybe it's not enough time. And also, what actually are they going to do with that admin? You don't actually know. And as said previously, you're kind of giving them a full admin account to do with what they want. And maybe that user kind of thinks, well, I've got an admin account temporarily. I can create a kind of temporary backdoor so that next time I won't have to put a ticket on. I can just do it myself. So this is kind of the first way you can get stung, because you've removed the local admin rights, but you're still having situations where you give it out. And it's at the point that you give it out that you start to lose control and the risk of infection goes up. So let's have a little look at exactly how you can mitigate against this POP scenario and also smooth that whole system of a user requesting admin for a specific thing, the granting of it, the execution of it, and then the auditing and logging, and then the putting things back how they were afterwards. Okay, then, so let's have a look at the POP scenario. So I'm logged in on the portal here, and before I start, I'm just going to make sure that if I go to the subsetting here for this demo user group configuration, I've got admin by request. You can see run as admin and admin session, they're all off. So on the endpoint, I tried to elevate something. It's just like admin by request is not installed, and the user has no admin rights. And if I could basically just type something, the logged in users details here, I get the typical error that I need rights to do this. So if I had revoked all of my users admins and they wanted to install something, elevate something, at this point they'd get the UAC prompt. They would then, I guess, need to approach help desk for the admin rights, and however that's given out, as we've mentioned before, either the IT help desk would have to do a remote session, or the user would be given maybe a lapsed password, who knows, and then things can kind of go wrong from there. So here's how we handle this with admin by request. So we will go and turn on the run as administrator mode, and we're also going to enable approval as well. And then we're going to just hit save. And then back on the endpoint, we're then going to pretend we're the user and then just click on something that needs elevation. And you can see that the user then gets shown this form, which, they don't need to learn how to use this. They just get shown a form. So I would like to install Notepad++, please. So the user would hit OK. They get told in their operating system language, a message to say that their request is being pending. And then over on the portal, you will get then, if I just duplicate this tab over, a request will appear like so. The people that are, managing the portal would then get this request fed in. I mean, the request might also come in via Slack or Teams or the ServiceNow integration that we have. They would see this and they would need to action this. So you can see here from this request that the application is this. The vendor is clearly shown here, the file name, and also the reason. But the really important part of this request is you can see this MetaDefender link here. So this is the built-in integrated MetaDefender checksum reputation service. So whenever a user goes to request an elevation of a file, before that request is allowed, we would send that checksum off to a kind of battery of maybe 20 different AB providers to be absolutely sure that the file that is being requested to be elevated is totally safe before that is done. And that's a fully integrated system that you can see and also use on the free plan. So we can see here that the check has come back as clean, and there's also like a second opinion that you can run through VirusTotal. And so, the help desk people can basically approve this here. So once the request is approved, it goes into the approved tab here, which is essentially approved but not yet used. That's what kind of this means. And if I go back onto the user's endpoint here, the user shortly get a notification that would appear on the bottom right of the screen to let them know that the file that they requested elevation has been approved. And here we have that. So what is the kind of crucially important thing here is that a user specifically requested to elevate this Notepad++ file here. That file was approved. And now they get the option to elevate, but only that file. So this is where the really granular control comes in. The file they wanted to elevate was checked through the checksum system, was then examined by a kind of human, and then it was approved. And now it's been approved. Only that thing that was requested can be elevated. So if I hit yes, I can then go ahead and elevate that now. And we can see from the task manager that this file is indeed the only process on the system that is elevated by that user. And this really is basically a POP scenario. It's what enables you to manage all of these kind of random requests for admin rights that pop up all over the place. And you can do that now as simple as just hitting either kind of like approve or deny. And it takes out a huge amount of disruption and workload on IT, and also importantly allows the users to be able to self-serve safely. And that is POP. Alrighty, let's take a look at Robo, who also happens to be my favorite unicorn of all five. And you can see here we have the title to avoid unintended annihilation consequences, which is not actually what UAC stands for, but in the case of this vector, what could possibly happen? So what actually is Robo all about? Well, the setting is basically commonly found where customers have industrial, engineering, military manufacturing, and nuclear power stations, scary, and warships. So it's kind of where you get legacy software connecting and controlling legacy machinery. And you typically need full admin to do that. So you've got things like sensors and actuators running, and that software is going to need to have full control over the I/O. And to do that, you would need admin. And you also need admin to be fully automated with no prompting, because obviously these things have to work without any kind of user input if they're automated. And when we talk to customers about, what they have done, and I've actually also seen things online from vendors who recommend to do this, this common workaround is actually to disable UAC completely. So you make someone an admin and then you disable UAC. Sounds absolutely crazy, but this is what happens, and it's quite terrifying. So that is the second kind of way, and it seems like a pretty obvious one, but anyway, how can you mitigate against this using admin by request? Let's take a look. And where we're going to start from is the same place we started the last use case of POP, which is that the endpoint itself, the configuration, has admin by request, both modes, run as admin and admin session, both turned off. And actually, for the Robo use case, this is the configuration that I want, because if you recall, this system could be on a production line or in plant somewhere. And the typical case is that you only want a specific or a few specific applications to be able to be elevated. You don't actually want anyone requesting anything else. So this is the perfect configuration for that scenario. So if I go back onto the endpoint and try to elevate things that I've not defined that can be elevated, you'll see I just get the standard Windows UAC and I kind of hit a brick wall there. So what I'm going to do now is show you, if I go to app control, and then here's what we call pre-approval. So this is where you can configure a specific applications or vendors that you will allow to elevate. So this is the rule I'm going to be working with. So Rufus is a well-known USB formatting tool. And all I've done here is basically specified that the checksum of a specific file can be elevated. And I've turned off a user confirmation, which just means that when a user elevates this application, there is no prompting, because if you remember, there may be an automation involved, and I don't actually want any kind of prompting to interfere with that elevation process. So if I go back onto the endpoint and find the Rufus application, let's just minimize that over here. And then if I just double click this, you can see that it's a manifest file with a little shield. So it needs admin to run. 2 clicks, and then we get the non-interactive kind of splash. And then you can see the application is launched, elevated here. And just to prove that it's launched, I can show you the process details. I scroll down here, you can see that it's well and truly elevated, and I would be able to kind of format USB keys if I needed to. So that is basically all there is to Robo, to configure a specific application to elevate without prompting, completely safety, whilst everything else on the endpoint has no rights to elevate whatsoever. And that is Robo. It's time for Hero to Zero Trust. So this is the Hero vulnerability vector. And really, this one is all about your help desk staff. And generally, we talk to customers, and what we find is that the help desk staffs they have is generally have full kind of global local admin rights. across the organization. So they can elevate on any computer from an intern to a CEO. And also, there tends not to be a terribly easy to access or understand audit trail of when all that is going on. So also, when you have a PAM solution, maybe even admin bar request, you would also want to restrict what users can do on their endpoint. So like in the first way we talked about with POP, the users have to be able to send requests in and get those approved. And then with Robo, this scenario, you only are able to elevate maybe one specific file. So if either of those types of guys has a problem and a help desk need to come along and fix something on the system, it's all locked down. And so how they're going to be able to service that user and elevate stuff they need to elevate to fix things like PowerShell or Access Device Manager, for example. So it's when they come to help users with their global local admin, they could actually end up unwittingly doing something that might in itself be a ransomware infection. And it's kind of that really is our third way that you can get compromised, because help their staff or elevating stuff, and there really aren't any protections if the stuff they're elevating isn't safe. So let's have a look now at how admin bar requests can help you with this type of situation. For this configuration, we sort of need two different subsettings, one for the restricted user and then another for the help desk user. And the difference here is that the user who belongs to this subsetting, we have, for example, admin bar requests turned off. We were just looking at Robo, so we have the kind of the Rufus application in here. We also have a tray tool that enables this restricted user to change their network adapter settings. So this is quite a restricted kind of user. And then for the help desk user, we've taken off the restrictions. We've enabled them to perform run as admin and admin sessions without approval. And then also under app control, there's no blocking. And we've given this help desk user a load more of these tray tools. So let's go and have a little look to see what that looks like on the endpoint. So just to go here, you can see that there's no ability to elevate. I have my tray tool network adapter, so I can actually go in as a user without admin and do some network adapter editing because I've allowed that. And that's already good. And I don't think I'll be able to even request access to command prompt. So quite restricted. So the user in this case has a problem that needs to be fixed. So a ticket is created. Someone then does a remote session and they would find the endpoint quite locked down. So how would you get this? So you would basically get the help desk user to go to the about part here and then go to assistance and then hit start. So this is where the help desk user would now authenticate with admin bar request, and they would type in their own personal user account. When authenticated, what's done now is what we call an assistance session. So what this does is essentially drag in that help desk user's admin bar request subsetting. So the subsettings that, if you remember, were not restricted at all. So we basically overlay the help desk users admin bar request settings on top of the restricted users. Okay, so this means that we have a whole load more of these tray tools. They just magically appear because the help desk user has authenticated as themselves, and therefore the subsetting that they're a member of gets all these tray tools because of that. Also, the help desk user can then elevate certain things that other user couldn't. So, for example, a command prompt can be elevated and applications can be installed without approval. And the kind of real beauty of the this kind of assistance mode is that, we've just finished it now, so it means that the user has now gone back to having no rights at all. As you can see here, the UAC prompt appears and the tray tool is now reduced to just network settings. But in the audit log, you'll see that what I think is really good is that you get a really nice log of not just the end user's computer, but also the person on that help desk team that performed the task. So this is really good for a number of reasons. So obviously you can remove admin rights now from your help desk team. They don't need it. They can use admin by request to do these elevations. You could configure that subsetting for help desk any way you want. So you don't necessarily have to give the help desk team or all of them rights to elevate anything. You could create different teams with different rights to elevate on different computers. And also, if you have shifts going on, you can hand over tickets from one help desk team member to another, and the person with the ticket that's the active shift will now know what has happened previously. So it's a much better way of running, in my view, a help desk team simply from a visibility point of view, but obviously it's really good also from a security point of view, because when we were the help desk user elevating things on the endpoint, remember we have that malware checking system that's still active, and as would any other blocks that you've configured too. So it's a much better way to enable help desk teams to help users. And that is how to prevent hero going to zero. We're on to the fourth way, Wiz. And Wiz is actually, you may have noticed that up to now we've been trying to give our unicorns very short and jolly names to describe the vector and the personality that the unicorn has. And this personality is all about our friends, the developers. And actually, after a long, hard think, I had a real problem trying to get any short, jolly name for one, but Wiz was all I could come up with. So Wiz it was. So let's have a little look at the Wiz vulnerability vector. So we're talking about developers. These guys are the hardest group of users to remove local admin rights from, simply because they're elevating all the time. It's kind of their job. To a developer, the local admin right, they see that as being kind of like a human right. Yeah, I mean, Article 23, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it says it right there, to just and favorable conditions at work. I mean, that is pretty much, they would say, local admin rights. Anyway, so you need to remove those admin rights. They have to elevate multiple applications, and they can't afford to stop and wait for approval. This group of users is also the most likely to elevate something malicious because of just simply the volume of elevations they're doing, and also in particular what the kind of stuff they're working on, like it could be your entire company's application system, whatever. A ransomware or IP theft there could be pretty devastating. And due to the fact that these developers would generally revolt when you attempt to remove their admin rights, these are generally the last group of users that have their admin rights revoked. So this is why, in general, when we talk to customers, developers still have local admin rights, are still elevating all over the place, and therefore they are the fourth way that you're most likely to get compromised by ransomware. So let's have a look and see how admin by request can help you with that scenario. So Wiz, as is for the developer use case, and admin by request has a mode which is generally recommended for developers, which is what we call an admin session. So an admin session differs from run as admin because run as admin is a per process launch elevator, whereas an admin session is a kind of system-wide, a time-based elevation system. So you can basically enable a developer to request, if you request, and you can do that, approval for a period of time in which they can elevate multiple applications, but those would be applications which you've defined that they can elevate. So you still have the control to deny a developer to elevate something if you want. So for this, I would say a good setup for a developer, if you're deploying, if you've just revoked their rights and you want to replace their rights with the next best thing to completely unrestricted admin rights, would be an admin session. Then ask them to put in a reason. There's nothing too onerous about just asking them to put in a reason. And I would also recommend giving them more time as a session than they really need. And the reason for that, at least initially, is so they don't get any kind of countdown clock anxiety. And you'll see what I mean by that in a minute. So if we go also to app control, we can also configure blocking so that we don't want our developers elevating anything made by Oracle. So this is just to show that when you do give a developer a session, you still have control over what they can and can't elevate. So let's just review our settings. So we've enabled admin session, we've set the amount of time on there, and we've set some blocking rules. So let's go and have a look on the endpoint as to what that looks like. So we don't have the per process elevation mode enabled. So we'll still get the UAC prompt when we try and elevate things outside of a session. So to start a session, a developer would need to go to the tray and then go request admin access. Now we configured a reason here. So the developer would need to type in a reason, hopefully not too sarcastic. I need to do some elevations for dev work, smiley face. And then I hit OK. So we didn't configure approval. So there's no need for this developer to beg IT or whoever for admin or not. We didn't require that. We just put the reason in. And as you can see here, we've given this developer ages, like 5 hours. So what we would do here, we'd probably say to a developer who is just kind of onboarded with admin bar request to say, look, here's the bad news is that, your full permanent admin rights are going, but the good news is that we're going to give you back pretty much full admin. The only difference is that you're going to need to kind of start a session and then you're going to please just finish it when you're done doing what you need to do. So the developer can then start elevating things that they need to elevate or install, for example. But, like we said, that you can still control, this MySQL is made by Oracle, so we can control what developers can and can't elevate as well. And the other really good thing here is that if I was to try and trigger, so let's say let's go and do an elevated command prompt as well. Why not? Because I'm a developer, we might need to elevate certain things like that. And if I was going to, by mistake, trigger some malware and try and elevate malware, you'll see what happens is this is the built-in malware reputation check kicking in. So the way I've configured things at the moment is that if something that is elevated that is seen to be malicious, suspicious, kill the session straight away, kill everything that is elevated by the session, and then alert a notification to security and also into the admin bar request event log system. And that can also be sent out on a webhook to whoever you want it to be sent to. And so this, in my view, is the truly best way to allow developers to carry on doing what they're doing, but at the same time, ensure that that happens in a safe and secure environment. And that is Wiz. And last but not least, it's Shadow, a mean-looking unicorn. You would not want to mess with this guy. So what is Shadow? Well, we're talking really about Shadow IT. This was something that was kind of like a bit annoying, a few years back, but it's becoming more and more of a problem, partially because of all the things that we've talked about on this webinar so far. And even actually, you're rolling out kind of certain tools like, PAM and EPM systems to staff. And then this is where your shadow IT people can actually use the tools you're giving them to help other kind of users. So in a way, by giving people just-in-time access to admin rights, the shadow IT guy can come along and give a friend of his just-in-time access as him, and therefore kind of short circuit the whole process. And they're doing it generally with good intentions, but obviously we all know that it's a big problem. And also, what compounds this issue is that with AD, you generally it was easier to sort of restrict with the right of log on locally, so that only the actual user of the endpoint could log in. And with we're finding anyway with customers with Azure AD find it more difficult to limit access to a device using via the Azure AD than previously. So the likelihood of someone coming along, being able to log into a colleague's laptop, do something as them, and then the colleague can then log back into it, and then whatever is needed is done, is becoming more likely. So this is the last way, because obviously when someone in shadow IT is mucking around with colleagues' systems, that's not a good thing and can only lead to trouble. So let's have a look to see how admin bar request can help you deal with our friend Shadow. Let's have a look at a particular feature inside admin bar request that can make it really useful to control and deter shadow IT and all of those bad things that go with it. So when you deploy admin bar request to an endpoint, the first non-administrator that logs into that device is set as the device owner. So in my kind of demo endpoint here, you can see the demo user has been assigned as the device owner. And there can only be one owner to a system. So really that is always there, and you probably don't even notice because it doesn't really do much as default. So the key setting here with regards to ownership is found in that user or endpoint subsetting, and then in the lockdown part here, where we have the owner setting. And you can see here that I have lock device to owner switched on, which essentially means that as long as the owner of the computer is the user that's logged in, I'm able to use admin bar request. And throughout this whole series of demos I've been showing you, we've been using admin bar request to elevate, and that's only been possible because I'm logged in as the user. So let us go and just, again, I've reset my settings to kind of all default. So I'm going to go and just turn on admin session and just show you very briefly that I can start an admin session because I am indeed the owner. You can see device owner. Yes, and that is all very good. So I could log out of this user and then log in as something else, but actually it's much easier to just sort of make the logged in owner not the owner. So if I go here and then go down to owner here, then you can see that this user is the owner, but then we have a button down here, which is kind of cool, which is release the ownership. So what this does, if I just click it, it means that this user that is logged in is now no longer the owner. So it's essentially the same as if I'd logged in as someone else that wasn't the owner. If I then go back to the endpoint and try the same action again, so it's request an admin session, we now get an error to say that we're not allowed to elevate because we're not the owner. And of course, as in many things in admin bar request, if there is a block, there is always the option to bypass it for one time only with a PIN code. So if I then go back and make the logged in user the owner again, which is just clicking that button, I then go back here, redo the task, and then hit yes, and then I'm back in business. I got my session. So there's a few really useful things about this functionality. I mean, the first one is that, yes, it means that if user A kind of gets a laptop from user B and then logs into this other laptop as themselves and then uses an admin session, they could, in theory, be able to access that other user's kind of profile and do stuff or get stuff. But with an owner locking turned on, they can't do that. They can only elevate create this admin session on their own endpoint. So that's great. And this is where the kind of help for shadow IT kind of comes in, because it prevents someone to help someone else with their own credentials on their own device. It means that only the owner of the device can actually elevate with it using admin bar request. But the other nice thing about this unlock owner feature and the release ownership feature is that if you're kind of reviewing your audit logs and you see a certain person that is using admin bar request in a way that you're not particularly happy with, you've got what is essentially a kind of kill switch just there in a single button. You can click that. The user would no longer be able to perform any more elevations. Either you'll get in touch with them, or probably more likely they'll get in touch with you very quickly, and then you can talk about what's happened, and either you can move them to a different subsetting, or just give them the owner rights back again if it was a misunderstanding, and that's all good. So you wouldn't have to do any more than just click a single button to temporarily disable admin bar request and then re-enable it again. So these are all really useful tools to kind of fight against the mischief of shadow IT in your organization. And that is shadow. I hope you found this webinar interesting. Perhaps you're an existing admin bar request customer and I've showed you some features and tricks that you've not used before. Or perhaps you're someone looking for a solution to better manage your admin rights, an easier way to deploy, configure, and manage that. So I'd like to thank my colleagues on the webinar chat that have been answering your questions, and we'll keep this open for as long as needed so you can get those answers you need. And don't forget, you can download admin bar request. That's all features free forever via the website. Our free plan is limited to 25 computers and does not come with any support. But the very fact that we have so many people using free plan and getting the full use out of it without support should reassure you that our solution is not exactly beyond complicated. That's all for now. Have a great day, and that's toodaloo from me.